Sergeant Nari Choi wiped the sweat from her forehead and placed her sunglasses on top of a supply crate. The twin suns of Vareth 7 were brutal today, even inside the shaded maintenance bay. She had been working on the water filtration system for 3 hours straight, and her hands were covered in grease. Finally done, she muttered to herself, grabbing her toolkit. She would come back for the sunglasses later. Right now, she needed food and a cold drink. The research station on Vareth 7 was not large, but it was important. Humans and Catherine worked together here, studying the planet and trying to build trust between their two species. The Catherine looked like large cats that walked on 2 legs. They had black scales instead of fur, and 4 amber eyes that glowed in the dark. They were warriors, proud and serious about everything. Nari liked them well enough. They were honest and direct. Commander Velanath, the Catherine leader at the station, was strict but fair. His 3 cubs sometimes ran around the base, playing and exploring. The cubs were named Shard, Ember, and Dusk. They were curious about everything, especially human things. That evening, Nari realized she had forgotten her sunglasses. She walked back to the maintenance bay, but they were gone. She looked around the crate, under it, and in her toolkit. "Nothing. Great," she said. "Those were my favorite pair." The next morning, Lieutenant Hine Park was drinking coffee in the mess hall when he saw something strange. 3 Catherine cubs walked past the window in a straight line. That was not unusual. Cubs played games all the time. But these 3 were walking very slowly, and their heads turned left and right at the same time, like they were looking for something. Hine walked to the window and watched. Shard, the largest cub, was wearing something on his face. It took Hine a moment to realize what it was. Sunglasses. Human sunglasses with mirrors on the lenses. The 3 cubs stopped in front of the supply building. They sat down in a row and stared at the door. They did not move. They did not play. They just watched. "What are they doing?" asked Private Jihoan, who had walked up beside Hyan. "I have no idea," Hyan said. The cubs stayed there for 20 minutes. Then they stood up together and walked away in formation, still moving in that strange synchronized way. Nari heard about the cubs and the sunglasses from Jiho during lunch. She laughed so hard she almost choked on her rice. "They took my sunglasses?" she said. "The cubs?" "Shard is wearing them," Jiho confirmed. "He looks ridiculous, but also kind of serious." Nari thought about asking for them back, but something stopped her. The cubs were not breaking anything. They were just playing. And honestly, it was funny. She decided to let them keep the sunglasses for a while. But the cubs were not just playing. Over the next few days, their behavior became more unusual. They walked around the base in shifts. One cub would wear the sunglasses while the other 2 followed close behind. They stopped at different areas and seemed to study them. They made clicking sounds with their mouths, the same sounds human military police made when using their radios. Specialist Jiwan Kang, the xenobiologist, started following them with her camera. She was fascinated. "They are imitating humans," she told Nari. "But not just any humans. They are imitating investigators. Security personnel. Where did they learn this?" Nari thought about it. Then she remembered. 3 weeks ago, she had been watching old detective shows on her tablet in the common room. The cubs had been there, lying in the corner. She thought they were sleeping, but maybe they had been watching too. "Oh no," Nari said. "I think this is my fault." The cubs began carrying small pieces of metal they had found around the base. They scratched marks on these pieces and kept them in a pile near the cubs' quarters. The marks looked random, but Jiwan thought they might be trying to write notes. "They are making badges and case files," Jiwan said, showing Nari photos. "Look, they copied this from human behavior." The base personnel found it amusing. Some people started saluting the cubs as a joke. The cubs, seeing this, began sitting up straighter and walking with more purpose. Then the cubs found their first real problem. It happened near the fuel depot. Shard was wearing the sunglasses, and all three cubs were doing their patrol. They stopped at a fuel coupling connection and refused to move. They sat there and made loud chirping sounds, which was the Catherine version of an alarm. A human engineer came to check. "Move along, little ones." "Nothing to see here." But the cubs would not move. They chirped louder. Finally, the engineer actually looked at the coupling. His face went pale. The connection was loose. It had been vibrating and was close to breaking. If it had broken during a fuel transfer, it could have caused an explosion. How did they? The engineer whispered. Words spread quickly. The cubs had found a serious safety problem. Commander Velanath heard about it and came to see his offspring. He stood tall, his four eyes looking down at the three small cubs. "You found danger," he said in his deep voice. "This is good." Shard adjusted the sunglasses and made a clicking sound. Ember and Dusk sat at attention beside him. The commander looked at the sunglasses, then at Nari, who had come to watch. "These are yours," he stated. "Yes, Commander," Nari said. "But they can keep them. They are doing good work." Velanath's face was hard to read. He seemed caught between pride and confusion. His cubs were acting like humans, but they were also acting like protectors. For a warrior species, that was important. "Very well," he finally said. "They may continue." That night, Captain Doinseo sent a message to headquarters. It was a simple request for more sunglasses. He had a feeling they would need them soon. The investigation unit had been born. The cubs took their new role seriously. Too seriously, some people thought. Every morning at 0600 hours, the three cubs would begin their patrol. They had established a route that covered the entire base. Shard still wore the original mirrored sunglasses, but now Ember and Dusk had found their own eyewear. Ember wore a pair of reading glasses she had discovered in the recycling bin. Dusk had somehow obtained a pair of safety goggles. None of the glasses fit properly on their faces, but the cubs did not care. Private Jiho An had become their unofficial handler. He did not choose this job. It just happened. The cubs followed him everywhere, watching how he worked, copying his movements. When Jiho walked, they walked. When he stopped, they stopped. When he checked his datapad, they pretended to check invisible datapads of their own. "I feel like I have three shadows," Jiho told Nari one day. "Very serious shadows that judge everything I do." Nari laughed. "They like you. You should feel honored." "I feel observed," Jiho said. But the cubs were not just watching Jiho. They were watching everyone. And they were finding problems. In the first week, they found 6 safety violations. A blocked emergency exit. Improperly stored chemicals. A damaged railing that could cause falls. A door that did not seal correctly. Each time, the cubs would sit in front of the problem and refuse to move until someone came to check. Lieutenant Ian Parks started receiving reports about the cubs every day. At first, he thought it was a joke. Then he read the reports more carefully. Every single problem the cubs found was real. Some were small, but others were serious. "How are they doing this?" he asked Jiwan during a meeting. Jiwan showed him her research notes. "They are learning our patterns. They watch how we inspect things. They see what we check. Then they apply the same logic. It is remarkable." "They are cubs," Hyan said. "Children." "Yes," Jiwan agreed. "But Catherine cubs are different from human children. They mature faster. Their instincts are sharper. And they have been exposed to human systematic thinking. This combination creates something new." Hyan rubbed his temples. "The brass is going to think I have lost my mind when I report this. Meanwhile, the cubs continued to expand their operation. They had created what looked like a small headquarters near their quarters. They collected pieces of metal, wire, broken equipment parts, and other odds and ends. They arranged these items in organized piles. To human eyes, it looked like junk. But the cubs knew exactly where everything was. They also started working in shifts. One cub would patrol, while the other two rested or organized their findings. They had learned this from watching the human security teams. Every 8 hours, they would switch roles. Commander Velenoth observed all of this with mixed feelings. His cubs were showing initiative and intelligence. That was good. Warriors needed both. But they were imitating humans, not Catherine. That was complicated. He spoke with Nari one evening. "Your species has changed my offspring," he said. In AR, I was not sure if that was an accusation or just an observation. "They are still your cubs, Commander. They still have Catherine instincts. They are just expressing them in a new way." "They wear your glasses," Velena said. "They wear glasses," Nari corrected gently. "But they use Catherine patience and Catherine observation skills. The glasses are just tools." Velenoth considered this. His tail swished slowly, a sign he was thinking. "Perhaps," he said finally. The turning point came when a diplomatic shuttle arrived at the station. It was a routine visit. A courier from the Catherine homeworld was delivering documents and supplies. The shuttle landed smoothly, and the courier began unloading cargo. The cubs were doing their patrol nearby. Shard, wearing the sunglasses, suddenly stopped. His head tilted. His nose twitched. Ember and Dusk immediately took positions on either side of him, their bodies tense. The 3 cubs approached the shuttle slowly. They circled it, sniffing and looking. Then they sat down in front of the cargo ramp and would not move. The courier, a large Catherine warrior named Talrek, was not amused. "Move, younglings. I have work to do." The cubs did not move. Shard made a low growling sound. It was not aggressive, but it was insistent. "I said move." Talrek's voice was sharp. Now. Captain Doincio arrived, having been called by security. "What is the problem?" "These cubs are blocking my shuttle," Talrek said. "Remove them." Diane looked at the cubs. They were sitting perfectly still, all 3 pairs of eyes fixed on the cargo bay. He had learned to trust the cubs' instincts. "Scanner sweep of the shuttle," Doyan ordered. "Full spectrum." "Captain, this is a diplomatic vessel," Talrek protested. "Such scans are an insult." "Humor me," Doyan said calmly. The security team brought scanning equipment. They swept the shuttle from nose to tail. At first, they found nothing. Then one of the technicians adjusted the scanner to a higher frequency. "Sir," the technician said quietly, "I am reading an unauthorized energy signature. It is hidden in the cargo hold, shielded, but it is there." Diane's face became hard. "Open the cargo." What they found was surveillance equipment. High-grade military specification monitoring devices. The kind used for espionage. Talrek claimed he knew nothing about it. He said someone must have planted it. But his scent told a different story. Catherine could not lie well. Their bodies gave them away. Talrek was detained for questioning. The surveillance equipment was confiscated. And the 3 cubs became heroes. That evening, Commander Velenoth came to the cubs' quarters. He found them sleeping in a pile, the way Catherine cubs always did. Shard still wore the sunglasses, even in sleep. Velenoth reached down and gently removed the glasses. He looked at his reflection in the mirrored lenses. He saw a warrior, but he also saw a father. His cubs had done well today. They had protected the base. They had used their minds and their instincts together. He placed the sunglasses back on Shard's sleeping face. Perhaps there was honor in learning from other species after all. The next day, Nari received a request from Captain Doyen. He needed her to send an emergency order to Earth. The order was simple but unusual. 20 pairs of sunglasses. Various styles. Child-sized if possible. Other cubs had started to notice what Shard, Ember, and Dusk were doing. They wanted to help. They wanted to be investigators too. The investigation unit was about to grow. The sunglasses arrived 3 weeks later. Captain Doyen distributed them to the cubs carefully, making sure each pair was assigned to a specific cub. There were now 12 cubs in the investigation unit. Shard, Ember, and Dusk were the leaders, training the younger ones in what they called proper procedures. These procedures were entirely based on the detective shows Nari had been watching. The cubs would approach a scene, observe carefully, sniff for unusual scents, and then scratch their findings into the dirt or onto pieces of metal. They worked in pairs now, covering more ground. The base personnel had stopped laughing. The cubs were too effective for jokes, but something else was happening at the base, something the cubs had not yet noticed. Research data was disappearing. It started small. A few files here, some experimental results there. Nothing that would cause immediate alarm. But Lieutenant Park was meticulous about records. He noticed the gaps. He brought his concerns to Captain Doyen. "Someone is stealing information," Hyan said, showing Doyen the access logs. "Small amounts, taken over several weeks. Whoever is doing this knows how to cover their tracks." "Do we know what kind of data?" Doyen asked. "Weapons technology. Shield designs. Power core specifications." Hyan's voice was grim. "Enough to build advanced military equipment. Or to sell to someone who wants to build it." Doyen felt his stomach drop. This was serious. This was treason. "Start an investigation. Quietly. Use our best security people. Human and Catherine both." "Already done," Hyan said. "But so far, nothing. The thief is clever." What neither of them knew was that the cubs were already on the case. Shard had noticed something odd 3 days earlier. He was doing a routine patrol with Ember when they passed the research building. The door security panel showed green, meaning it was locked. But Shard's nose detected something. Someone had been there recently. The scent was faint but present. And it was wrong somehow. It did not match the normal pattern of traffic. The cubs began watching the research building during off hours. They took turns, hiding in shadows, staying still and silent. This was easy for them. Catherine were natural hunters. Patience was in their blood. On the 4th night of observation, they saw something. A human technician named Minho was entering the building at 0300 hours. That was unusual. Minho worked day shifts. He had no reason to be there at night. Shard made a soft clicking sound to alert Ember and Dusk. The 3 original investigators were back together for this important surveillance. They watched Minho enter the building, stay for 20 minutes, and then leave. He was carrying a small data chip. Shard could see it in the dim light, but the cubs did not move. They had learned from the detective shows that one observation was not enough. They needed more evidence. They needed to understand the full picture. They followed Minho at a distance. Their dark scales helped them blend into the shadows. Minho walked to the residential section and stopped at a door. But it was not his door. It belonged to someone else. He knocked. The door opened. A Catherine stood there. The cubs recognized him. His name was Corville, a junior science officer. Minho handed Corville the data chip. They spoke briefly, their voices too low for the cubs to hear. Then Minho left. The cubs looked at each other. This was bigger than they thought. A human and a Catherine working together. Stealing data together. Over the next week, the cubs built their case. They watched. They documented everything in their own way. They scratched symbols into metal pieces, creating a timeline. They collected small pieces of evidence. A torn piece of fabric from Minho's jacket that he had caught on a fence. A footprint in the dirt near the research building. A discarded access card wrapper that Corval had thrown away. To adult eyes, these items looked like random trash. But the Cubs organized them carefully in their headquarters. They knew each piece was important. Meanwhile, the official investigation was hitting dead ends. Hyan's security team found nothing. The thief was too careful. Whoever was stealing the data knew how to avoid cameras, how to fake access logs, and how to leave no digital trace. It has to be someone with high-level access, Hyan told his team. Someone who knows our systems well. Private Jiho An was part of that team. He listened to the briefing and then had a thought. "Sir," he said carefully, "have the Cubs been acting unusual lately?" "The Cubs are always unusual," Hyan said, distracted. "No, I mean more than usual. They have been watching the research building. I see them there at night sometimes when I do rounds." Hyan looked up. "Show me." That night, Hyan and Jiho quietly followed the Cubs. They saw Shard, Ember, and Dusk take positions near the research building, hidden in the shadows. The Cubs did not move for hours. They were hunting at 0245 hours. Minho appeared. Hyan recognized him immediately. Minho was a trusted technician. He had been with the station for 2 years. But here he was, entering the research building when he should be sleeping. The Cubs did not react. They simply watched. They were not ready to move yet. Hyan wanted to move in immediately, but Jiho grabbed his arm. "Wait, sir. Let's see what the Cubs do. They know something we don't." 20 minutes later, Minho left the building. The Cubs followed him. Hyan and Jiho followed the Cubs. They all moved through the base like a strange parade of shadows. Minho went to Corval's quarters. This time, the Cubs moved closer. They positioned themselves where they could see and hear. Hyan and Jiho did the same. "This is the last batch," Minho was saying. "After this, we need to lay low for a while." "Agreed," Corval said. "The security is tightening. Someone suspects something. The buyer will pay well for this data. We can both retire." Hyan had heard enough. He signaled for backup on his radio. But before security could arrive, something happened. Shard stepped out of the shadows. He walked calmly toward Minho and Corval, his mirrored sunglasses reflecting the hallway lights. Ember and Dusk flanked him on either side. The 3 Cubs sat down in front of the door, blocking it. Minho laughed. "Cubs, really? Move along, little ones." But the Cubs did not move. Behind them, 6 more pairs of eyes appeared in the darkness. The other investigation unit Cubs had arrived. 12 Cubs now sat in formation, all wearing their various sunglasses, all completely still. "This is ridiculous," Corval said. But his voice had uncertainty in it. That was when Hyan stepped forward, his weapon drawn. "Nobody move. You are both under arrest for espionage and theft of classified information." Security teams arrived and secured Minho and Corval. The data chip was recovered. The full scope of their theft was revealed. They had stolen enough information to build an entire weapons platform. The buyer was a criminal faction in a neighboring system. As the conspirators were led away, Hyan looked down at the Cubs. They sat in their perfect formation, watching everything with their alien eyes. "Good work," he said simply. Shard adjusted his sunglasses. Mission accomplished. The interrogation of Minho and Corval revealed something that made Captain Doyen's blood run cold. They were not working alone. There were others. At least 2 more conspirators, possibly more. The investigation was not over. It had just become more dangerous. "They will know we caught Minho and Corval," Hyan said during the emergency meeting. "They will either run or try to destroy evidence. Or both," Doyen added. Double security on all critical areas. And someone keep an eye on those cubs. If the conspirators are smart, they will realize the cubs found them. But keeping an eye on the cubs was easier said than done. The cubs were investigators now. They went where they wanted, when they wanted. They had the run of the base, and everyone had grown used to seeing them patrol. That trust was about to become a problem. The next morning, Shard noticed something interesting. A human supply officer named Bowman was acting nervous. He kept looking over his shoulder. He was sweating even though the temperature was cool. Shard knew these were signs of stress. He had seen them before in guilty people. Shard signaled to Ember and Dusk. The three cubs began following Bowman discreetly. They stayed far back, using the skills they had learned. But Bowman was more paranoid than Minho had been. He noticed the cubs dotted first. He tried to ignore them. He walked faster. The cubs kept pace. He changed directions. The cubs followed. Finally, he stopped and turned around. "Go away," he said to the cubs. His voice was tight. "Go play somewhere else." The cubs sat down and stared at him. Shard adjusted his sunglasses. They were not going anywhere. Bowman's face went pale. He pulled out his communicator and sent a quick message. Then he walked away quickly, almost running. The cubs followed. Bowman led them to the maintenance tunnels beneath the base. These tunnels were old and dark. They contained pipes, wiring, and old storage rooms. Most people avoided them. But the cubs were not afraid of dark places. They followed Bowman down into the tunnels. The temperature dropped. The lights were dim and far apart. Shard could smell something strange. Another person was down here. Maybe two people. That was when the trap closed. Bowman had led them to a junction point where three tunnels met. Waiting there was another conspirator, a Catherine named Vethra. She was larger than most Catherine, a security officer who knew how to fight. "Stupid cubs," Bowman said, his fear replaced by anger. "You should have stayed away." The cubs realized their mistake. They had followed a suspect without backup. This was against procedure. They had seen this mistake in the detective shows. It always ended badly. Shard hissed and tried to back away, but Bowman had activated an energy field behind them. They were trapped. "What do we do with them?" Vethra asked. "We cannot let them report what they saw," Bowman said. "We need to disappear, but first we need to make sure there is no trail. That means destroying all evidence, including witnesses." "They are cubs," Vethra said with hesitation in her voice. "There are complications," Bowman snapped. "We have already lost two partners. We cannot afford loose ends." Above ground, Private Jiho was doing his rounds. He always checked on the cubs during his patrol. But today, he could not find them. They were not at their headquarters. They were not on their normal route. They were not anywhere. "Has anyone seen the investigation cubs?" He asked over the radio. Several people answered. No one had seen them in over an hour. That was unusual. The cubs were never gone that long without checking in. Jiho felt his stomach twist with worry. He went to find Nari. "Something is wrong," he told her. "The cubs are missing." Nari dropped what she was doing. "How long?" "Over an hour. Maybe more." They found Hyan and explained. Hyan immediately understood. They were following someone. Who was on duty this morning? Who could they have been watching? They checked the security logs and found something odd. Bowman had entered the maintenance tunnels 90 minutes ago. He had not come back out. And there was an energy field activated in the lower levels, which should not be on. "That is where they are," Nari said. "We need to go now." Hyan assembled a team quickly. Nari, Jeho, and 4 security officers. They armed themselves and headed for the tunnels. Down in the tunnels, the cubs were in trouble. Bowman and Vethra had them cornered. But the cubs were not giving up. They had spread out as much as the small space allowed. Shard was in front, Ember to the left, Dusk to the right. They were small, but they had sharp claws and teeth. They would fight if they had to. Just stun them, Vethra said. We do not have to kill them. No, Bowman said. Stun cubs can wake up. Dead cubs tell no tales. He pulled out a weapon. It was not a standard military weapon. It was something illegal, something designed to kill quickly and quietly. That was when Shard made a decision. He was the leader. He was wearing the original sunglasses. He was the one who had started all of this. If anyone was going to get hurt, it would be him first. He launched himself at Bowman. For a cub, Shard was fast. He knocked the weapon aside. It fired, but the shot went wide, hitting the tunnel wall. Bowman cursed and tried to grab Shard, but Ember and Dusk attacked from the sides. 3 cubs against 2 adults was not a fair fight. But the cubs were desperate. Vethra tried to pull the cubs off Bowman without hurting them. She was still Catherine. She still had honor. But Bowman had no such concerns. He threw Shard against the wall hard. The cub hit with a thud and fell. His sunglasses cracked but did not break. Enough. Bowman shouted. I will shoot them all right now. That was when the rescue team arrived. Nari came through the tunnel at a dead run, her weapon up. Behind her were Jiho and Hyan. Drop it. Nari shouted. Bowman turned his weapon toward her. That was a mistake. Hyan fired first. Bowman went down, unconscious from the stun blast. Vethra raised her hands in surrender. She had known this was wrong from the start. She was relieved it was over. Nari ran to the cubs. Shard was dazed but alive. Ember had a scratched side. Dusk was limping. But they were all breathing. They would survive. Stupid brave little fools, Nari whispered, gathering Shard into her arms. You are supposed to call for backup. Shard made a weak clicking sound. It was the sound the cubs used for understood. Jiho picked up the cracked sunglasses from the floor. He looked at them sadly. They had been through so much. He gently placed them back on Shard's face. Still on duty, he said. The cubs were carried back to the surface. Commander Velanath was waiting. When he saw his son being carried by Nari, his face showed an emotion humans rarely saw in Catherine. Fear, and then relief. He is well? Velanath asked. Bruised and shaken, Nari said. But he will be fine. All 3 of them will be fine. Velanath reached out and took Shard from her arms. He held his son close. You took risks, he said to the cub. Foolish risks. Shard looked up at his father with all 4 eyes. Even dazed, even hurting, he adjusted his cracked sunglasses with one paw. Velanath made a sound that might have been a laugh. But you were brave. And you protected the base. There is honor in that. The investigation unit had faced its greatest challenge and survived. But the case was not closed yet. There was still evidence to find and justice to serve. The medical bay was crowded. 3 cubs lay on tables designed for adults, looking very small. Dr. Yuna examined each one carefully. Bruises, scratches, a mild concussion for Shard. Nothing permanent. Nothing that would not heal. They were lucky, Yuna told Commander Velanath. A few centimeters different, and Shard's impact could have been much worse. Luck is for the unprepared, Velanath said. My son was prepared. He chose to protect his team. He is still a cub, Yuna said gently. He is a warrior, Velanath corrected. Small, young, but a warrior nonetheless. Outside the medical bay, Nari sat with Jiho. They were both exhausted. The entire base was on high alert. Bowman and Vethra were in custody. The investigation had revealed 2 more conspirators who were arrested without incident. The conspiracy was broken. "The Cubs did it," Jiho said. "They actually solved the case." "We helped," Nari said. "At the end, yes. But they found the trail first. They built the case. They took the risks." Jiho shook his head in amazement. "I never thought I would see Cubs be better investigators than trained security personnel." "They learned from us," Nari said. "They took human methods and combined them with Catherine instincts. They created something new." Captain Doyan was thinking the same thing. He was in his office, writing a report that would go to both human and Catherine command. The report described everything that had happened. The Cubs, the sunglasses, the investigation, the arrests. He knew how it would sound. Ridiculous. Unbelievable. Cubs in sunglasses solving a military conspiracy. But it was true. And more importantly, it was significant. Lieutenant Hyan entered the office. "Sir, I have been reviewing all the Cubs' evidence. The items they collected, the symbols they scratched. With help from specialist Jiwan, we were able to decode their system. And they documented everything. Dates, times, locations, suspects. Their system is crude but accurate. They have better case notes than some of our trained investigators." Hyan placed a tablet on Doyan's desk. "This is a translation of their findings. It is impressive." Doyan read through the report. He had to admit, it was more than impressive. It was professional. The Cubs had followed proper investigative procedure without ever being formally taught. They had learned by watching and adapted what they learned. "We need to think about what this means," Doyan said. "Not just for the base, but for both our species." 3 days later, there was a ceremony. Both humans and Catherine gathered in the main hall. Shard, Ember, and Dusk sat at the front, looking uncomfortable with all the attention. Shard's sunglasses had been repaired. They were polished and shining. Captain Doyan spoke first. "These 3 Cubs showed courage, intelligence, and dedication. They identified threats to this base and helped bring criminals to justice. For their service, they are awarded the Joint Station Medal of Merit." He placed 3 small medals around the Cubs' necks. The medals were made specially for them, smaller than standard medals, but just as important. Commander Velenith spoke next. "In Catherine culture, we value strength and honor. These Cubs have shown both. They also showed something else. They showed that learning from others does not weaken us. It makes us stronger. For this, they received the mark of the Adaptive Warrior. This was a rare honor. The mark meant the Cubs had brought new tactics and knowledge to their people. It was usually given to adult warriors who made great discoveries. Never to Cubs. Until now, Shard stood up on his back legs and saluted. It was not a perfect salute. His paw was at the wrong angle. But it was sincere. Ember and Dusk followed his lead. The entire hall erupted in applause. Humans and Catherine together, making noise and celebrating. The Cubs looked overwhelmed but pleased. After the ceremony, Nari approached Shard. She knelt down so they were at eye level. "I have something for you," she said. She held out a new pair of sunglasses. They were aviators, like the original pair, but these were different. They had been specially made. The lenses were the right size for a Catherine Cub. The frame was reinforced. And on the side, engraved in tiny letters, was Shard's name. "For a proper investigator," Nari said. From one detective to another. Shard carefully removed his old, cracked sunglasses. He looked at them for a moment. These glasses had started everything. They had changed his life and the lives of everyone on the base. But they were broken now, and he had new ones. He placed the old glasses in Nari's hands. Then he put on the new ones. They fit perfectly. Nari understood. She would keep the old glasses safe. They were history now. The following weeks brought changes to the base. Captain Doyen established an official program called the Cultural Exchange Security Initiative. Young members of both species could join and learn investigation techniques. The Cubs were the instructors, along with trained security personnel. More Cubs joined. Some human children from the civilian sector asked to participate too. Soon there were 20 young investigators, all wearing sunglasses of various styles, all taking their duties seriously. Lieutenant Hyan wrote a detailed report about the program. It was required reading at the military academy within a month. The title was Adaptive Learning in Cross-Species Environments: How Juvenile Cooperation Achieved Senior-Level Results. Specialist Diwan published a scientific paper about the Cubs' behavior. It was titled Cultural Synthesis Through Observation, a Case Study in Interspecies. Knowledge Transfer. The paper was cited in universities across both human and Catherine Space. Private Jiho was promoted to corporal and put in charge of the youth program. He still called himself the Cubs' handler, though really they did not need much handling anymore. They knew their jobs. 6 months after the conspiracy was broken, the base had changed. It was safer, more efficient, and more unified. Humans and Catherine worked together better than ever before. The Cubs had shown them how. On a warm afternoon, Nari was sitting outside the maintenance bay, the same place where this had all started. She was drinking cold water and watching the investigation unit do their patrol. 20 young beings in sunglasses, walking in formation, checking for problems, keeping everyone safe. Shard led the group. He was bigger now, almost an adolescent, but he still wore his special aviators. He still walked with purpose. He still took his job seriously. As the unit passed Nari, Shard stopped. He looked at her. Then he did something unexpected. He saluted. It was a perfect salute this time. He had been practicing. Nari smiled and saluted back. The rest of the unit followed Shard's example, each young investigator saluting in turn. Some salutes were human style. Some were Catherine style. Some were a mixture of both. But all of them meant the same thing: respect, recognition, thanks. When they had passed, Nari leaned back and closed her eyes. She thought about that day when she had left her sunglasses on a crate. She had been tired and careless. She never imagined what would happen next. Sometimes the smallest actions lead to the biggest changes. Commander Volanath approached and sat beside her. This was unusual. The commander rarely sat casually with anyone. Your sunglasses changed my son, he said. Your son changed himself, Nari replied. The sunglasses were just tools, perhaps. Volanath watched the young investigators disappear around a building. But tools can unlock potential. Your species brought tools we did not have. Not weapons or technology, but ways of thinking, ways of seeing. And your species brought instinct and patience, Nari said. Together, it works. Yes, Volanath agreed. Together, it works. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the base function smoothly. In the distance, they could hear the young investigators making their clicking sounds, communicating with each other in a language that was neither fully human nor fully Catherine, but something new, something better. That evening, as the twin suns set over Vareth 7, Shard stood at the edge of the base and looked out over the alien landscape. His team was behind him, ready for the night patrol. He adjusted his sunglasses and felt the weight of his metal. He thought about everything that had happened, the mysteries they had solved, the dangers they had faced, the friends they had made. He thought about the day he had found those first sunglasses. How curious he had been. How strange they had felt on his face. Now they felt natural. Now they felt like a part of him. He turned to his team and made the clicking sound that meant move out. The young investigators fell into formation and began their patrol. Above them, stars were appearing in the darkening sky. Two species, countless worlds, infinite possibilities. And somewhere, a pair of old, cracked sunglasses sat in a display case in Nari's quarters. A reminder that great things often start small. That courage comes in unexpected forms. That the best investigators are not the ones who follow only their own nature, but the ones who learn from everyone else's. The patrol continued into the night. The base was safe. The investigators were watching. And somewhere in the universe, more cubs were finding sunglasses and wondering what they could become.